everyone, a very good evening. You tuned into The Money Show on ET Now, your one-stop destination for all money matters. I'm Mubina Kapasi, and today is a very special day of this episode, and personally one of my favorites. The 3rd of December is internationally marked as the day for persons with disabilities, and it includes a wide range of people. In India as well, Prime Minister Modi as well tweeted about how India will do its best to ensure inclusion in every form for people with disabilities. And that's what we as well on The Money Show want to dedicate our show towards. More than 2% of India's population is disabled in a particular way as per NSO data. And mind you, we are not just talking about physical disability, but even mental disability. So here's what we are going to be discussing. How should parents of children with special needs safeguard their child's future? How should they manage their money? What are the schemes there available, in fact, by the government as well for differently abled or children with special needs? Also, we are going to be joined by Shreya Jain of Reservoir to talk about what are the resources available out there for special need kids, a parent of a special need kid who's doing a lot for the community over there, and another lady who's very proudly beating the disability and how. Today is the day that we are going to be marking the International Day for Persons with Disabilities. And to talk about that, I have with me Shreya Jain of Reservoir Neurodiversity Consultants, and also Naresh Alreja. He is a parent of a child with special needs as well as the founder of the Aashish Foundation. So firstly, thank you so much for joining us and taking our time for this conversation on The Money Show. And at the outset, let me also express my admiration for the work you guys do. Naresh, I'd like to start off with you first. You have the Aashish Foundation, which is doing a lot for children, for individuals that have special needs. And not just that, you yourself as well are a parent of a child with, special needs. So, of course, for an outsider, it's very difficult for them, obviously, to grasp what are the requirements, of a special needs child. So why don't you, at the outset, kickstart the conversation, tell us about that. What's the journey like? What's the experience, the day-to-day difficulties, challenges, perhaps, that, you as a parent, and even for that matter, your son may have to grapple with?
Yeah, my son currently is 28 years old. Okay. And right from when he was 2, we realized that we had a problem, and the entire journey is quite difficult because every level you need a lot of help, support. Yes. So we have been through all of it, and we realized that there was a grave need for the kind of support that is required, and that was the whole reason why we started Aashish Foundation, so that what we went through, other people at least find it easier to find one source where they can get all the treatment, the therapies that are required. That was the whole idea. But the journey has been quite tough
yes.
because every level you realize that the capabilities of these children, like a normal person would learn from the environment, but these people don't grasp that. So we find it very difficult. Even today, he has a lot of challenges. He will not understand numbers in terms of money, in terms of being able to interact with people. So those are a lot of challenges which we face day to day today also.
But I suppose the unconditional love that you get from these children, I think more than makes up for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like you said, speaking of not being able to find resources, that's where I think Shreya Reservoir steps in. So if you could talk a bit about what exactly Reservoir does.
Okay, so I started Reservoir about a year ago. And we started as a future security planning company where we wanted to help parents and families like mine and Naresh's to plan better for the future so that my brother and like Naresh's son, they remain safe and secure even after the parents are not there. Right? So the idea is to have a one-stop shop. We live in a world of convenience.
Yeah.
And I remember my brother's now 20 years old. And the challenges that we faced 20 years ago to find help, to find information, to find the right kind of resources, I think parents still grapple with the same kind of issues. And today, when everything is available on your phone, I think we've sort of left a piece behind in terms of, matching with the West, which is why I started Reservoir, because I think all of this as a consumer, all of their needs should be understood and made easily available on a single platform.
But do you think India now has all the resources, has the infrastructure, or what are the areas where we are still lagging behind to provide a safe and secure future, for your son or for your brother?
I think we're decades behind from where we are of how people with different abilities are treated in the West. I think the infrastructure, the quality of support, even by the state, even by the government in the West, is far more than it is over here. But I think we're starting out now. I think after so many years, the Persons with Disabilities Act got revised. The National Trust Act came in. So I think steps are being taken. I think there are foundations like Aashish Foundation which are using technology to help children learn their daily living skills and occupational therapy. And I think we are progressing in the right direction.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So, Naresh, tell us a bit then about Aashish Foundation as well, because I think what essentially Shreya will be doing is connecting the Aashish Foundation to parents whose children would require a foundation as such. So, tell us a bit about it.
So, Aashish Foundation has been there for 10 years now, and it works with children of all ages, and they work with kids as small as 3 months old.
Oh, okay.
So, when they realize they have a problem, they can work with therapies with 3 months old child, and works with adults of all ages. So the idea is to train not only the child but the parents also, because the child comes to an institute just for a few hours but is with the parents all the time.
True.
So parents need to be trained how to handle children. So it works with children, it works does a lot of workshop for parents, so constantly works on training parents. So that's what it is.
So, Naresh, you mentioned 3 months old. That's such a young age.
Yes.
I mean, based on your 10-year experience, do you think parents over the last few years have perhaps become a bit more accepting about their child having a certain disability? And obviously, I'm keeping my focus only on Indian parents.
They have become more aware, because when 28 years ago I had my son, we didn't even know what was happening. There was no knowledge about all of this. So even the internet was not that popular at that time that you can go and search for something.
True.
So today, because of media and everything, people are aware. If you have a problem, you are exactly able to find out. And yes, because of media, you are able to accept it also. You know what is the case. So yes, definitely more accepting in that sense.
Okay. Now, the more harsher reality of it, and like you mentioned, right, the kids having a life even after the parents are no more. I think independence is something that's very, very crucial, and I'm sure as parents you must be shuddering to think what will happen to your child with special needs after you. So anyway, I want to start off by talking about the current expenses, Naresh. I'm sure that a special need child would perhaps be requiring more financially as well, not just of course emotionally, etc., but purely from a financial perspective. I'm sure they would be requiring more than a child that does not have any special needs. I mean, what have you seen? What sort of in comparison have you seen an extremely high cost that are involved with kids with special needs?
Yes, definitely high cost is involved. First is the normal child would, once he's an adult, start earning his own living. Whereas here he's constantly all his life dependent on the parents' earning. So that becomes a big challenge. Now parents have to earn for the entire life, even after their life for their child. So that is challenging for parents. Most of them are not able to afford the kind of care, treatment that is required. So one of the concerns we all have is what happens to our kid when we are no more. And because they will need that support all their lives.
Okay. Shreya, what do you think are the resources available out there? Because like Naresh mentioned, not all kids have the fortune to be born in obviously very wealthy families. So in such a situation, are there any resources available out there so that the parents feel that, okay, if in case my child does have to go back on something, this is something that perhaps the government has provided, or perhaps like Aashish Foundation, etc. has provided. Are there resources for that?
I think there definitely are.
Okay.
And as a company, we're trying to discover more and more of these options.
Okay.
But one thing that's recent is the National Trust Act, right? I think they've come up with several schemes under it which allow parents to gain support at a more subsidized cost.
Okay.
For example, after a very long time, there is a health insurance called Nirmaya Health Scheme, which covers intellectual disability, right? And if you look otherwise, there are very few options that are available. In fact, they even have early intervention schemes. So there are different schemes under the National Trust Act. I'm still yet to discover what is the quality of support and infrastructure under these schemes. We're still discovering that.
But do you know anybody who's taken advantage of this scheme?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay.
So far, I know that foundations like Aashish Foundation,
Yeah.
they go out of their way to help families if they can't afford support.
Yeah.
I mean, I've known Naresh for a while. I never think they've refused a student who comes to them. And similarly, there are other foundations that I know of who go out of their way to help such families. So I think it's a very small knit community.
Yeah.
Everybody understands the challenges really well. So everybody comes forward to show support, to support each other in whatever way they can.
Okay, that's very nice. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
suppose you're maybe more empathetic as well, right, to each other, because you exactly understand what the your peer, the other person's going through. So Naresh, what are the first steps, according to you, once a parent discovers that unfortunately their child will grow up to have special needs as opposed to a regular child? What are the first few steps a parent should do according to you? Like, for example, if at 3 months old I've realized, or 6 months old I've realized that I think my child's going to be different. What do you recommend parents should do?
In my times, in those times, we didn't have reservoir. Now they have reservoir. They can definitely one-stop
Contact.
shop to find out what exactly is required. And otherwise, there are doctors, there are therapists, there are trainers. They need to find them. Who would train them? They can come to Aashish Foundation, who would tell them what exactly needs to be done. And there are special needs schools once they grow up beyond schooling age.
Yeah.
So they can get help there also. So all of that is there, yeah.
In your experience, what usually is the life? I mean, I want to ask this question to both of you all, but Naresh, I'll come to you first. In your experience, after the schooling and the education age is over, which let's say 18, 19, 20 odd years, what sort of a life then can these kids expect to have if we have to live in a country like India?
Okay, so there are some sheltered workshops where they can work out of. So they will always need support, as I said. So in sheltered workshops, they can do an employment, which is possible with limited capacity, capabilities. So that is something which they continue till they grow old.
Okay.
Not 100% of them are employable, but let's say a good number can be employed.
And in fact, I was just looking at some statistics as well that we have, again, from the NSO data, and if I'm not mistaken, only 24% of persons with a disability are actually employed. How would you say, Shreya, because you worked in this community abroad as well, in the US as well, you worked with them. So how would you say that compares to when you look at abroad? I mean, are employers perhaps more accepting, more inclusive of people with disabilities?
I think 100%.
Okay.
The organization that I was working for in New York, the Global Autism Project, I remember in that small team, there were 5 people, if I'm not wrong, who were differently able, and we were a team of 10? So that's almost 50% of the workforce. But again, if you look at companies like Microsoft, Accenture, companies that have very, very large scale programs for inclusive hiring in the West, don't have similar scale programs in India, right? They may have a few employees who are differently abled, but the resource groups that are there in the West don't exist here.
Okay. All right. Okay. I also want to talk to you as well about the same question. What's life like for special need kids after they finish their education, 18, 19, 20, etc.? In your experience, according to you, what's life like for them after that?
I think it's hard to say for everybody because every child has a different ability,
course,
right? So depending on where they are on the autism spectrum or which disability or different ability they have. But I can talk about my own brother.
Sure.
So who is non-verbal, he's on the low functioning spectrum of autism. I think for him, the best life that we imagine is that he's codependent on me and on my family members.
Okay.
So he's independent in terms of his daily living.
Okay.
Right? And we've taught him a lot of housework recently, right? So like he's learning how to chop vegetables, he's learning how to like do house chores, which You wouldn't imagine a 20-year-old boy to be learning. But I think that is the best use of his time
He'll
and his
still
skills.
be more independent than a lot of men out there, I suppose, if he knows how to chop vegetables.
Absolutely. And so the question that we asked ourselves a couple of years ago was that if he were to live with me, what is the best way to make his life easier and mine?
Yeah.
Right? And even for now, when my parents are so actively helping him identify things that he can do with his day-to-day, there are also vocational options, right? Like he's an amazing weaver. So he knits scarf, he knits fabric, which can be turned into like cloth later.
Yeah.
So I think it's about identifying the right opportunities. Like Naresh said, there are sheltered workshops. There are employers out there who, when sensitized, are willing to hire people with disabilities or different abilities. So I think it's always to be on the lookout for different opportunities and identifying what your child is actually capable of doing and not pushing him into a direction which might not work for him.
Yeah, I was actually just reading a tweet by one of our politicians who said that we should rename this day as specially able. And I kind of agree with that because at the outset it may look that okay, this person has special needs, but there may be that one niche that he or she is really good at. Like for example, your brother's really good at weaving, knitting, making scarves, etc.
Yeah.
I'm sure your son as well is really good at that very niche thing. So I suppose once you're able to identify that skill set or identify the talent, I'm sure like a lot of us, for example, would love such, to purchase such things and, to sort of patronize such things. I think that's the main key, right? To sort of try at least and make them financially independent. And then the rest, I suppose, does follow. So these workshops that you were mentioning, the sheltered workshops, could you name a few, for the benefit of all our viewers, or if you could talk to us about what exactly are these sheltered workshops, about, if you could just share some more information.
So there's one like Home Creations. What it does is it has various food items which they make, like breads and baked items which are sold. Plus there are various gift items which they make. So that kind of workshops are there where...
Okay, and they are all across India, or is it just mainly in Mumbai?
Quite a few in major cities, but smaller cities I wouldn't be sure how many other.
Sure. Okay, all right. Okay, Naresh, I also did want to talk to you about, like you mentioned, get the child used to, like you mentioned, you teach them that few skill sets like chopping vegetables, etc. What's the right age, Naresh? Because you want to make your child independent, but then at the same time you're worried about him or her harming herself because of, the lack of the motor function of the skill set. So how would you essentially advise the parents, ease the child into your day-to-day operations and just make them codependent and not completely independent?
This will vary for every individual child, so there is nothing which will work for every child based on the capabilities of every child. So like my son has been quite independent in that sense in all his motor skills, and fortunately for me he's working also in a company called Barrier Break, which employs mainly people who are all differently abled. Okay. So they have a staff of almost 250 people today. So he works there and he's been there for last 10 years.
Okay, so I just have the last couple of minutes. So very quickly, Shreya, right now let's assume that the Prime Minister's office is watching you, and the Human Resource Development Office is watching you. You mentioned a couple of laws that have just recently been passed. What more do you think the country needs to do to ensure complete inclusion into society, into various aspects of society of specially abled or differently abled or persons with disabilities?
I think if there is one thing that I could ask for right now, is I think we have a framework. I think we need to implement it better.
Okay.
We have a UDID card, we have legal guardianship, but if the parents are not, if the families are not sensitized, if the people who are going to execute these schemes are not sensitized, if you and I are not sensitized as to what are the benefits of these special provisions, I think we sort of the purpose is defeated. I think we need to focus on creating more awareness for options that currently exist.
Okay.
Right? I think we need to focus on sensitization of general public. We need to move outside the houses of just people with special needs and move outside to workplaces, to hospitals, to police forces. I want to talk about this child who's been missing from his family for the last couple of months, right, because of a mistake made by a railway police officer.
Yes,
right?
I think he was put onto another train, right?
So he's been separated from his family. As a country, I think if we're just more sensitized towards the needs of people and towards people who are different than us, I think we need to do better than that, right? So I think if companies have more incentives, and you should popularize those incentives to hire people who are differently abled, have employee resource groups like that, make the parents feel so empowered that they're proud of having a child who's different rather than being ashamed and hiding them in their own houses. I think that's what I can say.
And Naresh, let's assume we have parents watching you right now of specially able, differently able children. What would be your advice to them?
If parents are watching
Yes.
yeah, I mean, they receive a lot of love from their child,
Oh, yes.
and they need to reciprocate back, which most of the parents do.
Of course.
Yeah, and I think, can I add,
Sure,
add something?
please go ahead.
I think what Naresh has not mentioned is a project that he's working on,
Okay.
which is called Aashish Homes,
Okay.
which is it's a residential center where people with special needs can find a home after their parents. And I think it's a project one of its kind. He's put in a lot of effort in creating, in doing his research and finding benchmarks of really high quality.
Okay.
So I think that's also an option that parents should know about.
Yeah, okay. Well, on that note, I would like to really thank you, not just for coming on the show, but for everything that you're doing as well, for this very special community of individuals that we have out there. And my best wishes to both of you for the wonderful work that you guys are currently doing and will, of course, I'm sure, continue doing, for the foreseeable future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mubina. Thank you.
Well, folks, not much available in terms of financial resources from the government. Many a times parents have to ensure that they have done the financial planning needed to ensure the security of their child's future. What exactly is required? I'm going to be joined by a very special guest, Chitra Iyer of My Financial Advisor, after this very short break. And if you too are a parent of a child with special needs, you can call in and get your financial question answered just after this break.